Hello, everybody. We are back. Welcome back to the P-LotPodcast, everybody. John here, joined once again by the main man himself, Michael. How we living, dude?
We're, you know, we're doing all right, I guess. We're watching the Olympics, and some of those are pretty cool. Gold medal hockey tomorrow morning. That'll be fun to tune into. USA, Canada. You look outside and you're like, oh, that's what grass looked like as the snow is pretty much all but gone in most places. Was I muted that whole time?
No.
Oh, okay. It just popped up. But won't be for long, as apparently snow is hitting the area by mid to end day Sunday into Monday. We'll see how much we actually get. But what really matters, what truly, really matters, is that we have Phillies baseball on the television today. Phillies, Blue Jays, Crawford's in the lineup, Adolis Garcia's in the lineup. Bryce Wilson, depth arm is going to be pitching, potential spot starter here and there in case something terrible can happen. So there are reasons to be tuning in to the Phillies game today, their first one of the spring, and it's gonna be fun, man. I'm excited. I'm always excited when the team comes back around. I think the only time I didn't feel like super excited was after 2023 for the 2024 opening day season. I think a mix of the bad jerseys with the small font and like I just needed a longer layoff after the Diamondback series. That didn't happen, but besides that, I get excited every year, and this is no exception. I am quite excited for the Phillies to start back up again.
Me, I am as well. I feel like we're in the minority on that, Michael, based off of how people are
Yeah,
acting.
I'd say so.
I do think everyone's just kind of annoyed at how the Eagles season ended and what's going on with them. And I think the Phillies and the Sixers, or sorry, the Phillies, pardon me, the Sixers and the Flyers, how they're progressing or regressing, depending on who you ask. And yeah, I think there's just kind of honestly an apathy towards sports right now in Philadelphia, but I think it's
Yeah.
impatience, I would say. Obviously, with the Eagles, you want to know what's going to happen with free agency, um, in the NFL draft. We will actually talk about that later on. So today's show is actually going to be a first, something we've never done before. We're going to do the State of the Union of Philadelphia sports, and unfortunately, we're not going to talk about the Philadelphia Union. Michael and I aren't really as knowledgeable in that to discuss that, even though Union is the
Title.
in the title. Um, yeah. So yeah, we're gonna kind of I would say kind of go over what's happened so far with each team. Go over the roster, front offices, and then kind of maybe do a future outlook, especially because now State of the Union in the United States should be soon. Um,
So that'll be great.
I'm sure that'll be fun. I'm sure Kalshi will have props you could bet on, I suppose, for that.
It's a great time to be alive, I'll
Yeah,
say.
yeah. So, right. So let's just kind of start off here. Let's start off with the Flyers, Michael. You went on a rant several weeks ago about the Flyers, about, I would say, the direction they're taking, right?
Yeah.
Well, why don't, and I don't want this to be just a repeat of this.
No, we're gonna try to keep this professional, you could say.
Yeah, we'll keep this professional. In your absence, we had friend of the show, Mac. He called in and he said a lot of naughty words, and
Mm.
Zach, who has helped me co-host, was going like this on the screen, counting every F word he was saying.
That's funny. That's good stuff.
So, no, we love you, Mac. I just thought that was funny.
It's
But
fun.
yeah, all right. Do you mind if I kick us off for this, and
Please
then
take
you can
take
fill
the
in?
reins.
So for this one, because I feel like we need a good, because I feel like you're gonna do really well with the Sixers. So, what have the Flyers have done so far? Well, Michael, they're kind of, to quote former Vikings and Cardinals head coach Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were. You know, they're out of a playoff spot, which I thought was a lot faster than I had anticipated it would happen when, they were playing very well November to early December-ish, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, man, it's they're kind of in the same spot they were in. I want to say they're looking a lot like the team last year, which, besides Trevor Zegras, like, yeah, it makes sense. It's pretty much the same identical roster. The What I do think though is that with Dan Vladar back, a lot of the losing they did during like mid December to January, a lot of it was due to bad goaltending.
Hmm.
And if the Flyer and from what I understand, the Flyers have zero intention of trading Dan Vladar at the deadline.
I don't have much intention of trading anybody at the deadline, is what it actually sounds like. Sure, they're getting into Risto, but you know.
Yeah, and like this does feel like the Risto now holding on to Risto is like if you hesitated to sell your Palantir stock a month ago,
Hmm.
now. So the Flyers would be lucky if they even got a second round pick, and they were holding out for two firsts last year at the deadline. And I do find it odd. Listen, I do find it odd that they won't even listen for offers on Vladar now that Bennington played well the last couple of games for Team Canada. Like I'm seeing I saw like hypothetical trades where Vegas would trade for Bennington to be their playoff goalie. Like do you honestly mean to tell me if the Flyers made Dan Vladar available that they wouldn't get like at least 5 or 6 phone calls from teams that need a goalie that might.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give myself enough slander to the point where, admittedly, um, I'm not well versed enough around the league as I used to be in the NHL, um, in terms of like the top teams in the league and whatnot, and who could actually possibly need a goalie. But looking around the league, there's always you kinda can always use some sort of depth if you don't love your backup, and you look at, like, the top teams in the league and, you know, a team like who's in Montreal is really where my head's at, where it's like under 3 goals against, save percentage under 900 from Jakob Dobis or Dobes, but they're in a good spot, and they do tend to give up a lot of goals, and it feels like, one of those shot in the arm goalies could be helpful for a playoff
Michael, the
sort of
Montreal
stonewall.
Canadiens, like their team is so fast and talented. Like it would sort of be like, I don't know if you have like I don't know, like it's kind of like the Orioles. I hate doing this. I'm trying to think of a comp. It's kind of like when the Orioles a couple years ago traded for Corbin Burns, where it's like
Mhm,
you need a piece to kind of help you take the next level. And listen, I'm not saying Dan Vladar's like Martin Brodeur or anything, but Michael, you see how bad this Flyers defense is. He's made so many incredible saves for them.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you know what I mean to tell me if he's like playing with a better defense that he's gonna, you would think in theory, still continue to play as well as he has for the Flyers.
mhm, yeah, yeah. It's It's true, and it's like it's one of those adages that most guys that are actually good and not just like some kind of schlub, if they go to a new team, especially a guy that's like not super doesn't have a huge attachment to the team he's been on. You know what I mean? Like Scott Lawton, obviously huge attachment here, gets traded to the Leafs, and it was just not very productive for them down the stretch. Like if I was a Leafs fan, I don't think I'd be parading that trade, obviously. But like guy like Vladar hasn't played a full season here. You know, was really kind of a career swingman, not given a true opportunity to be a starting goalie, kind of runs away with it here and plays well for most of the season, gets banged up a bunch. I do think that's the sort of guy that would elevate his game with a contender, something like that. So I do think it's worth acknowledging and worth looking for a Vladar trade, Ristolainen trade, as he's only got 1 year left. But I did recently read an article. They're not just going to dump him for no reason. But if teams come calling and offer something that's valuable, they'll do it. And I don't know. I guess, like, when we talk about, like, a roster outlook and what have they done, and what you're getting is they haven't done much of anything, right? They haven't been good. They overperformed, like, early in the season, and it just kinda hurts them down the line, like, that's sort of the status quo. But in terms of, like, outlook of the roster and how you could actually make it better, they're not aggressive in really changing the team at this point. They are very much adept to kinda let moves come to them. You know, it feels like if they didn't have the whole Cutter Gauthier situation and, like, let's say they didn't trade him to the Ducks, they traded him somewhere else, it feels like they wouldn't have got Zegras, you know what I mean? I think they had so many personal connections with the players like Drysdale that they acquired, and, you know, they had just made a trade recently that you could almost buy that the Ducks reached out to the Flyers about Zegras as opposed to the other way around, and it's like, I I just think there's a lack of we talk about the direction and, like, don't wanna harp too much on it, but with the lack of direction, there also feels like there's a lack of urgency, and, you know, I know rebuilds take time, they probably take a little too long in the NHL as a whole, and, like, that's something to that the league needs to look into, but regardless, they really aren't they're just not they're just not going about it the right way. They're being aggressive in the wrong ways. They're being aggressive by extending the current players that they have on the team and trusting that they'll bring them to, you know, a playoff spot as opposed to actually, you know, tearing it down a handful of years ago and then aggressively pursuing these young players that are disgruntled, you know, aggressively pursuing a Martin Necas and promising him a one center spot as he was like a upset winger in Carolina. And those are the sort of moves that you do to be aggressive and get your team in the right shape without like, you know, just without just waiting for the right thing to happen. And that, you know, Keith Jones admittedly said they were waiting for this big free agent class this year, and they were surprised by the cap going up, which, again, not sure how a front office executive could be surprised by the cap going up when all fans knew it was happening. Um, but that caught them by surprise. So they weren't, you know, teams didn't let their guys hit the open market. Like straight up, a lot of teams didn't do it. And other teams that wanted these players made the trade so they didn't have to bid for them on the open market. Like it's just they're playing two different sports really. The Flyers are playing checkers, maybe less than checkers, while everyone else is playing chess.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I also do think though too. I don't know. I'm trying to like we always try to read between the lines when it comes to like GM speak, coach speak. I don't think the Flyers were ever really serious
Mhm,
in pursuing free agents. I think all that was window dressing to get, season ticket holders to re up because a lot of like I don't know, I feel like the Flyers fan base is definitely the most divisive I think of the four fan bases in terms of the direction of the team. You
mhm.
know, I feel like Sixers, Eagles, and Phillies fans kind of all agree with what they should do. Flyers fans, however, are not on the same page. And this is what I mean. When you look like Mitch Cobb is a very good example. The old school fans like want him sent to up to Lehigh Valley, right?
Sure.
And they want him traded for like Quinn Hughes, right? Killing it at the Olympics, by the way. Quinn Hughes is probably the best defenseman in the world. Here's the thing though, is this isn't 1998 anymore. You know, if the Flyers would have traded for Quinn Hughes, he would not have re-signed here.
Yeah.
100% would not have re-signed here. I don't care about, you could say, oh, but he likes Tocchet. Listen,
It
I
doesn't
don't.
matter, man. He wanted to go to a good team that was actively good and actually up and coming, and that's what Minnesota is. Like, not that it's some, you know, they win all the time, but you know what I mean? It's just a different situation. And with Michkov, I think the Flyers are pretty lucky that Michkov has some fault in like his play at the moment. We talk a lot about blaming the organization, blaming the coaching staff and all that stuff, and I think a lot of it's valid, but there is some truth. Clearly, in his first professional offseason, like, over here like, he was a 20-year-old, like, he effed around a little bit, and it's like, it's not it's not what you want, but it's also not, like, the worst possible thing in the world, and he came into camp a little out of shape, and he, like, acknowledges that, recognizes that, and I think the Flyers are really lucky because I do think that Rick Tocchet would have pulled this crap kinda regardless, you know what I mean? I think Elias, Pettersson in Vancouver is a good enough example of just hurting young stars' growth, where even if Michkov was in great shape and was, visibly you could tell was playing really well, I do think that there still would be issues with how he would be deployed by Rick Tocchet. And if that was the case, like, that's how you start teetering on a young player wanting to request the trade, like a player that's really good and knows they're really good and isn't getting the respect or minutes that they deserve, especially on a losing team when you're really like the winning is clearly hard to make the top priority to the point where you need to sacrifice a bunch of stuff for it. Um, that's how you get people to ask out. That's how you get players to want out. But luckily for the Flyers, Michkov did come in a little bit out of shape and is aware that he did that and self-admittedly, like, takes a good chunk of that blame. And for that, like, he's going to be willing and want to stay and get in better shape, work hard, whatever. And, we see him, he brought a personal trainer with him to the Dominican Republic while he's on the Olympic break and he's working out and stuff. But I do think that there's there's a level of care to be able to that you need to treat your young players with, and I don't think they've hired the right coaches. The last 2 coaches, I don't think they've made the right decisions for that. I think in theory, they thought it was a good idea of like, "Oh, we're gonna hire the veteran coaches, tough, get their heads screwed on straight and get the mentality right, and then we'll be ready to go." And it's like, the truth is you made some players hate wanting to play hockey, to be completely frank. You made Cam York, like, scared to play offense, and you made Jamie Drysdale scared to play offense, and now those 2 guys aren't really living up to the potential we kinda held them to at the moment because they were kinda, like, forced into submission when they have the puck on their stick as opposed to, being those aggressive playmakers on the blue line that are kind of like ceiling raisers. You look at the good teams around the league, and a lot of them have those sort of Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes style defensemen that can move the puck and skate the puck up the ice, and they've always been like that. Like Victor Hedman could drag the puck through center ice for Tampa over the years and stuff. And Gustav Forsling's a really good defenseman for the Florida Panthers, and you know the Oilers with Bouchard, and it's like those are it's just having an elite offensive defenseman, I think, definitely raises your potential on how good you can actually be, and when you look around the league, they all got one, and you've, like, drafted and acquired a bunch of that, uh, pr what am I trying to say? A bunch of that, archetype, and
You're not
you
using it.
hinder their development a little bit, and this is, like, how you get stuck, and
Exactly.
unfortunately,
It's
they're stuck.
almost like, yeah, dude, it's like it's like if you have a pitcher that can throw 98, 99 miles an hour, but you just have them throw breaking pitches nonstop because you're afraid of developing the fastball. Like, it's like you're hindering development because you're trying to run a team like it's 2002 still.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
agree. Uh, you mentioned we kind of hit all the points we wanted to talk about, like the talking points here. So, except for the future outlook. So, I think the Flyers will continue. I think the Flyers will, I hate to say it, will probably finish in that 11th, 12th spot because I think Dan Vladar is still pretty good. And I don't really foresee them I don't think they're going to make any trades, Michael. I think they're going to hold on to Risto because even though he had a
Mhm.
pretty good Olympics for Finland, I don't think you can use the Olympics as you know, you shouldn't use it as a uh, bargaining position if you're the Flyers. Like, he played well in
Well,
4 games, and in 2 of those games, he's bullying teams that don't have a single NHL player on them.
I listen, I understand that, but I do think that there's enough teams, and, like, I think the general hockey world respects the Olympics enough. I think it's a little different than, say, the World Baseball Classic, where, like, say, Taiwan Walker shoves for Team Mexico. I don't think the Phillies are making calls like, did you guys see that? Did you guys see that on March 9th? How good he looked right there?" I mean, that's like, it's a higher intensity spring training for some of the guys at a time, but, like, I do think the Olympics holds more weight in the hockey world, and, like, it's not you know, the Olympics got Yabusele an NBA job again, like, that worked in basketball to an extent, but again, at the same time, um,
Yeah,
you know
that's just getting a job. I mean, we're
Right, they're
talking
not teams
like
aren't looking at a player in the Olympics and being like in pretty much anything except hockey, I'd
like
say, and
realistically,
say, "Oh, you wanna get this guy?"
like realistically, here I want to turn my light on. Give me one moment. Sorry. Oh, that was weird. Okay, sorry about that.
It's fine.
Much better. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, like what would the Flyers even get for Rista? I said like a third round pick because he has a bad contract and he has
No, well,
staying
I wouldn't
healthy.
say he has a bad contract. At this point, it's only after this season, it's only 1 year left, right? No, he's a free agent. Oh, yeah, yeah, after this year, he's got 1 year left, so you pay the prorated, and you have him at 5.1 million next year. I wouldn't call that, like, a bad contract by any stretch. I think, even if the Flyers take some of it down, like, it's not like 3 more years on top of this for a guy that you don't love. And, like, honestly, John, if the Flyers can get a first round pick for Scott Lawton and a player back for Scott Lawton, I do think you can do better than a third for Rasmus Ristolainen. Like, they're just I Lawton on any good team is like and he was the Maple Leafs, like, 3rd, 4th line center versus Ristolainen's like a 2nd D pair guy. I just think the value there is definitely different to an extent. Regardless, I would explore it. I don't think there's just we
Oh,
talk
I
about
agree. Yeah, so
we
I
talk
would
about
say
direction of the team.
I would say for future outlook, we both think they should retool look to move pieces off this roster, you
Mhm.
know, free up cap space, explore open up spots for some like an Alex Bump, for example, so
Mhm.
he gets minutes. But I think we both agree that's not going to happen because the coach does not want to coach young players. The GM wants him to coach young players. So does the team president. But the head coach, let's be honest, I think that Dan Hilferty probably doesn't want to do a full blown rebuild because he is from the area, so he's definitely aware of what happened with the Sixers 10 years ago. And he's probably mortified that the Flyers brand would hit such a low point, kind of like what the Sixers did. With the exception that at least the Sixers, like they did kind of get things back from the tank, to a certain
Mhm.
extent, where the Flyers don't I don't we don't know. Like they're like
Mhm.
everyone knows the Flyers charge overcharge fans for tickets,
Yeah.
what they're putting out. And the fact that you're gonna have to, if you're gonna do a tank job rebuild, they know their fan base. Like their fan base is gonna be really turned off by it, right? You
Right.
know, and they're gonna get pissed, and they're probably worried that then and then once you commit to that, you're almost forced to have to be good again
Mhm.
because that's the only way you bring them back. You
Yeah.
know, that's just my take.
I mean,
That's
the problem is that, like, the Flyers, unfortunately, the Flyers brass has always kinda had too much pride in that regard of not wanting to commit to the dumpster because they never had to in the history of their franchise. I say this on the pod all the time, that my lifetime is the worst era of Flyers hockey, and, like, it really didn't get that bad until the last, like, 6 years or so, you know what I mean? Like, even growing up, it sucked because they were in Mediocreville, but they were usually in the playoffs, playoffs every other year. They had a cup run in my early days, and it's like, those are this is the dark ages of the Flyers
right. If
franchise.
they had taken Cale Makar and Cole Caulfield instead of Nolan Patrick and Cam York, then
Who knows
yeah,
what it looks like, you know what
and
I
and
mean? But
and then we would it would this would probably be like we would probably be talking about, okay, what then. I think the missing out on Nietzsche's and like Kaprizov would even
mhm,
be way worse, because then it would be like, why are we waiting for the missing piece for us to sign? We need to trade pieces to get them here,
mhm.
or
Yeah,
ransom in, you
yeah.
know. That's
But
that.
to look in the future for the Flyers, obviously, we hope that Zegras, you expect him to get extended and look at, long term and hopefully can get better, ascend into that truce, at least the number 2 center. Obviously, we're still chasing the number 1 center at this point. Um, Michkov again, you just hope guys keep getting better. But in terms of like the guys that we haven't really seen either a ton of or just not at all yet, like Denver Barkey, really encouraging stuff so far, and hopefully can earn a good full time spot next year. And then your Alex Bumps is another guy that just kind of fits in that similar mold. There's Porter Martone is very exciting. I think he's gonna be good. People are pretty confident and high on him. The one player I will say that's just like would just have to shock you at the next level, because I think what the Flyers viewed of him versus maybe what he actually is versus the fan, it's all a little bit different. It's Jet Luchenko. If Jet Luchenko is what the front office views him as, then I think we're in a bit better shape than we had previously thought. I think the Flyers are in a better outlook if Jet Luchenko is great. But the problem is that I don't think a lot of people around the league or the, prospect people, they don't think he's going to be that great. And that unfortunately puts you in a bind of still needing the number 1 center. Like, you still need a first line center, and it's hard to acquire one of those. Like, most teams what we talked about, most teams don't get rid of those guys. Kaprizov was never getting moved by the Wild because why would you trade away a top flight guy like that? Like, those top flight forwards, kind of period, but especially centers don't really get moved anywhere. Chris Pronger talked about it, and it's true. Hockey rebuilding in hockey, you do it through the middle. You don't do it through, an all-time like a winger unless it's someone like Alex Ovechkin, where we're talking about a guy that's gonna break the goals record, you know what I mean? Like, Patrick Kane's only as good as Patrick Kane is because he came up at the same time as Jonathan Toews, and it's like, there you go, there's your all-time great center to go along with it. Crosby and Malkin are 2 all-time great centers that the Penguins got gifted and put them in a position to actually be heavily successful. Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard, these guys are all centers. The only guy that's not a center, not only guy, but it's like another guy that's a winger that panned out to be great, Nathan MacKinnon, and it's like, okay, another all-time historic great Nathan MacKinnon
What
right there.
about the possible player of the tournament in the Olympics in Macklin Celebrini Center?
Yeah, exactly. All these guys are centers, right? So to really kind of build throughout, you get centers, you get defensemen, you get a goalie. And listen, if Matvei Michkov is going to be like the headway of the true savior of the franchise and put them into being competitive, all the time, unfortunately, he's going to just need to be an all-time great. Like we're going to need to look 10 years down the line and be like, Michkov of the 2020s and 2030s was one of the best players in the league, the entire time. You got to look at him in a similar light as Nathan MacKinnon. You got to look at him in a similar light as like Patrick Kane when it all comes down to it. And that's just a high bar to live to. He could not be that good and still be incredible, or he could be, and that would be awesome. But until they really get a bona fide top flight number one center, the reaping of true benefits, it just feels unlikely for the Flyers.
Yeah, if you look at the Flyers' history during their most successful periods, their best player was, or at least one of their top players was a center.
Yeah. I mean, Claude Giroux, like the perfect example, and
Eric
eventually he
Lindros, Bobby
moved to
Clark,
wing.
Dave Poulin.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
So,
What are you gonna do?
well, all right, let's move on to the Sixers, my friend.
Yeah,
Take it away.
yeah. So the Sixers, I'll try to keep this. What have they done so far for this year? The truth is that from it's the Sixers early in the season saw a good amount of success with Joel Embiid not even remotely close to the level he's been playing at for the last month. Granted, he's been banged up. We'll get to that part. Um, but I think that is for a decent reason. Even Paul George wasn't around, and they were still winning games. And you're like, well, how could this possibly be? What's going on here? Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Kelly Oubre, and Quentin Grimes combined altogether shot 45% from three early in the season. And no shit. Like, if you have a team where you can pick 4 players that play a lot of minutes and they're going to shoot 45% from three as a quartet, you can say, you're going to be successful. There's almost like you are in today's NBA, any era of NBA. If you're having that at like high volume shooting like they were and shooting 45% from three, you are going to be a really good team. So they were ahead of their skis early in the season. They were definitely overperforming without Embiid at his best and without Paul George for a little bit until he really kind of rounded into form by, I would say, like Christmas time or so, and then Embiid by like January. Fast forward to like a couple weeks ago when Paul George gets, suspended or whatever, and Embiid has been banged up the last like week or so, and all of a sudden it looks like a totally different Sixers team. It looks like a team that, you know, if they played a full 82 without Embiid and without Paul George, they'd win 15 games and they'd be, top draft pick again. And what's annoying, it's a handful of things because people are like, "Oh, how are they doing it so early?" And not really recognizing a couple of things. Not recognizing that Paul George is still an important piece. Like, people are saying without Embiid. It is without Embiid and without Paul George. If Paul George is on the floor, he definitely minimizes some of the problems that they have glaring. Like just the rebounding gets a little bit better, and the ability to defend, wings gets better, and you're not forced to be playing two like power forwards that like at the same time that really don't provide you a ton offensively other than like some, good rim running and pick and roll game and whatever. Like you just get ability back when Paul George is on the floor and he's not on the floor. So both those guys off the floor, Embiid and George, it puts you really in a bind. And the two biggest weaknesses for the Sixers have been defensive rebounding, and like transition defense has been a huge one as well. And Embiid, for most of the early season, it was like, oh, he's killing the transition D. He's why the transition D is bad. And early in the season, that was true because without Embiid on the floor, they were still scoring and playing offense at a really high level. So when all the guys that were on the floor could run, the transition D was better when Embiid wasn't on the floor. Fast forward to now, the offense is not good enough anymore. Maxi's clearly gassed. He's playing way too many minutes, and like that doesn't look like it's going to change. Edgecombe looks like he's hitting a bit of a rookie wall. Quentin Grimes is not playing nearly as aggressive or hitting the shots that he was early in the season. Kelly Oubre isn't hitting the shots that he was early in the season. And that making the offense worse without Embiid, the transition defense is bad, and it comes down to like, well, the transition defense was always bad. The only way the transition D isn't as bad is because you have good offense. It's that old adage that is like in all sports. You hear it in all sports. Oh, the best defense is good offense. That sort of thing. And when Embiid's on the floor, their transition D isn't as killer because they're not playing defense and transition as much because the offense is better. He's scoring at such a high clip like he usually does. He's making his shots. He's a lot more stressful for defenses to deal with that they can't get out and run the floor like they do today when Oubre's missing threes and Edgecombe's shot isn't falling and Maxi's shooting inefficiently and all that sort of stuff. So they clearly miss Embiid. The ceiling is capped without him. Like, not even the ceiling, the floor is like fallen beneath them without him. And they're just in a position where if he's not playing and George isn't playing, they suck. They're a lottery team. Like they're a bottom of the barrel lottery team. They're not good. And when he is playing, they got a shot. They get a shot with anybody on any given night just because how good he is. It's the same old story. It's the same thing it's been, even, despite the fact of him maybe not being at the truest MVP level, but he basically averaged 30 in January roughly. And that's something that's really impressive and deserves to be celebrated. But looking at what he's currently been dealing with, he's had a shin issue, but Nick Nurse, I'll be honest, knock on wood. Nick Nurse said on Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday. When did they play the Hawks? Thursday, I think.
Thursday.
He said on Thursday, if it was a playoff game, I would expect him that he would have played today. So to me, that's pretty encouraging, I will say. And he's out again tonight or today against the Pelicans. I'm not really sure. Tonight, that game's at night. And the only reason I'm not worried at the moment is because it is the first leg of a back-to-back. They're in New Orleans tonight, and they go to Minnesota to play the Timberwolves tomorrow. And listen, if he doesn't play tomorrow, then like I'm kind of sounding the alarms. I'm like, oh, this is not good. It doesn't feel like there's clearly definitely something wrong, and we have an issue here. But he did travel with the team. I feel like if he wasn't going to play, he wouldn't have traveled. And I do expect him to play Sunday. And if he plays tomorrow and he looks like himself and looks fine, then I think we can all take a bit of a breather. But this is part of the plan. Like, this is what we kind of wanted. When he's not 100%, when he's feeling sore, we wanted him to sit. We know he can play through soreness and like is going to probably have to come playoff time. But when you're still in the regular season, we want to make sure that we don't push it with the soreness. And, that's what leads to the injuries. And that's the whole domino effect of it all. So, all this being said, and you look at the current state of the team, and you look at the fact that, they traded Jared McCain for a bad first round pick and then seconds and didn't do anything else at the deadline. And they just acquired Campaign back and, they added another two-way guy. Like, they're just run by stupid people. They have a terrible owner, obviously, that likes to duck the tax. And the GM This really does go back to probably James Harden and not giving him the extension that he wanted because you made a bad
Well,
bet. He
it's
made a
not
bad
just
bet.
Daryl Morey. Remember, Elton Brand's also the Sixers GM as well.
Well, it's Daryl Morey. Like he makes the decisions. He calls the shots. He makes the calls. I like Elton Brand. I is not smart either. I'm not gonna give him that credit. You know, he gave Al Horford a big contract. He gave the Tobias contract. But Daryl Morey, like he was the one that didn't think James Harden was going to age well. Where at this point we would have been in year 3 of 4 of his extension. And if we look at James Harden the last 3 years, guess who like hasn't lost the step even remotely? And that's supposed to be his buddy, his guy. And that bad bet, I really do think capped your ceiling the last couple years for sure. And you're still kind of reaping the benefits. Or reaping the negatives, I guess you could say. You see how he's been with the Cavs so far, and you know their outlook looks pretty positive. They've won 7 in a row. And then you
James
watch
Harden,
McCain
the
last
Clayton
night,
Kershaw of the NBA.
and then you watch, Jared McCain drop 21 last night, Thunder leading score in a 19-point victory, and it's just all the more frustrating. You know, Morey says he sold high on him, which like he just didn't at all. And apparently you had too many guards when the only amount of guards you had was 4. Apparently 4 guards is too many to have on a team at any given moment. It's just dumb. It's stupid. You wanted to get under the tax, fine. You could have done that in like 1,000 other ways than just dumping Jared McCain. And that's what the GM and president of basketball ops, whatever, that's what they decided to do. And it's frustrating because not only does it feel like you definitely took some vibes out of the team, like team favorite, fan favorite in Jared McCain, it does look like you kind of sucked the life out of him a little bit. And, you had your best player beg, hopefully we don't just duck the tax this year and we add to this group and or at least keep it together, haha. And then you trade away one of the pieces that everyone loved. Like Maury just doesn't believe in the team. And like when the guy that makes the decisions doesn't believe in the current construction of the roster, which, by the way, man, you built the roster, but regardless, when you don't believe in it in a true contender sense, you can just throw your hands up as a fan and be like, "What are we supposed to do? Who are we supposed to?" You know what I mean? Well, what are you expecting a team where the GM doesn't believe in them to win to actually do? Do you expect him to push the chips in on a group that he doesn't view as a true contender? That's just no GM does that. And that's where we're at right now, where the more you look at the standings and hopefully Embiid gets back, but you look at the standings and they're currently God, my computer's so slow sometimes. They're currently in the 6th seed. They're 2.5 games behind the Raptors for the 5 seed. They're 4.5 games behind the Knicks for the 4 seed, and they're 5 games behind the Cavs for the 3 seed, and they're 6 games behind the Celtics for the 2 seed. They're only a half a game up on the Magic from being in the play-in, and, like, that's obviously extremely unideal. You do not wanna be in the play-in. That 1 extra game of nothing is very frustrating. But you also, you don't wanna be it'd be cool if you could get home court in the 1st round at the very least. It feels unlikely or whatever, but you had an opportunity to get yourself in a position to throw yourself in the mix with the Celtics, Cavs, Knicks, and you could have been in there as a part of that group, like, under the Pistons who are dominating this season, and set yourself up for an opportunity to win the 1st round and be in a tough 2nd round matchup. But the way you went about your business, they're destined for either a play-in spot or a really tough road 1st round matchup that is gonna be very grueling to get through if you do get through it. And it's hard to really envision a championship run or a conference final run or any sort of serious playoff run the way the team is currently constructed and currently playing. And listen, maybe Embiid comes back tomorrow and drops 35 and they win, and it's like, okay, he's back and the ceiling of the team has risen again. But until you see it, it's definitely hard to be optimistic about the Sixers. It really is difficult to be super excited about them at the moment because the team didn't show any faith in them. And like right as soon as the fans started kind of turning the corner on them and believing in them a little bit, they just kind of snatched it right from you with the just the atrocities committed at the trade deadline. And Combine that with Embiid getting a little sore and banged up and missing some games, and this is what you get. The apathy is, like, in full force again with the Sixers, and honestly, it's not even apathy as much as everyone's kinda just pissed off at them.
Yeah, I want to touch on something you did. One person you kind of briefly mentioned, Nick Nurse. The knock on Nick Nurse when he came to the Sixers was that he's not very into developing young talent if the young talent isn't like an elite talented player. In other words, he would only play a guy like a VJ Edgecombe because he's head and shoulders better than almost every veteran, like border, like like washed up vet or like other young player you have. Like in other words, he's not like Tockett where he'll play Edgecombe like 10 minutes a night and plays Eric Gordon 30 minutes, for example.
Right, he wasn't doing that,
He
but
wasn't going to do that, but clearly he had no interest in developing Jared McCain. And I think Daryl Morey had the same philosophy. That's why Jared McCain is not a Sixer right now.
Mhm,
However, I was when you were pontificating on the Sixers and their woes, their most recent woes. I went and looked at the Tyrese Maxey splits from over the past months, and the stats totally back up what you're saying, Michael.
mhm.
The thing though is because Maxi plays so many minutes, gee whiz, Michael, if you're arguably the best player on the team, right? Tyrese Maxey will say, right? Him or Embiid, right? We could we
Mhm.
could, we could debate which player's better, right? Gee, maybe if you were to play McCain a little more to rest Maxi, he won't look like he's tired or worn out because, it looks like he's pushing it a little bit, when he's on the floor trying to push threes. And we know how Tyrese Maxey loves to play. He's,
Fast.
a more talented Jalen Brunson, except he's not a free throw merchant. Like he's not seeking, not throwing himself around to try to get fouls. He
Mhm.
he does finish at the basket, he tries to actually finish at the basket, not draw a foul.
Regardless.
Regardless, but it's asinine because it's like, oh, well, I have to play Maxi all these minutes because I don't have better options, but it's like, that's your job, dude. That's why I got fired by the Raptors. That's my point. Like, if it wasn't for Kawhi Leonard sinking that, doink, 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 doink in, no one would freaking know who Nick Nurse is. Because the only reason he is known is because he won an NBA championship in one of the worst years in NBA history for a team to win an NBA championship.
Yeah, yeah, I did avoid Nurse, not intentionally, but it just the other stuff is so in your face, but it is true. Nick Nurse deserves a lot of crap, because not like, and listen, McCain was getting a decent bit of run early in the season, but it's true. He was recovering from injuries and didn't really have his legs under him. Like, didn't look as explosive. The shot wasn't falling, and I was fine with him, going through stretches, not getting minutes. I honestly would have preferred him to just be sent to the G League and actually play more than just one game that they
Yeah,
gave him the
knock
one
off the
time.
rust.
Like, just exactly, get really the equivalent of like a minor league stint in the in Major League Baseball. And the like when you talk about this, oh, we had 4 guards and there's no spot for McCain, but you just mentioned it, Tyrese Maxey playing as many minutes as he's playing, and like VJ Edgecombe averaging 35 minutes a game for like a 20-year-old rookie, by the way, not like anything else.
You
Like,
see how many minutes Cooper Flag is averaging. Keep going.
it's just like, what do you expect? You know what I mean? Like, they're the guards are clearly exhausted, and there was just no concerted effort, and like that definitely falls on the coach a lot, but like, god forbid the front office also said something. Like, the front office does have say to come down and be like, listen, we got to get Maxi some more rest during games. Like, he's averaging, how many minutes a game is Maxi playing? um
So, FYI, Cooper Flag is playing less minutes than VJ Edgecombe.
Yeah, the Maxi's averaging 38.6 minutes a game. Last year, he didn't even play more. He played less than that, and that was in a lost season where no one was on the floor at all. But anyways, Maxi's averaging 38.6 minutes a game. There's no reason for there's no reason like, Luka Doncic is only playing 35 minutes a game. You know what I mean? Like,
And he's hurt.
but it's like we're talking about the best guards in the league. How many minutes do you think Jalen Brunson's playing a game? 34 minutes a game. Like it's we're talking about the best guards in the league and, you know, Cade Cunningham, 35 minutes a game. There is a sweet spot. The sweet spot max number that most really great players play, especially guards, is 35 minutes a game. And that's that's what we're playing VJ Edgecombe. Like, that's crazy to me. You look at all the minutes in the league, across the league, it's like they're all at 35, all at 35. And that's what we're playing our 20-year-old rookie, and we're having our point guard play for like 39 minutes a game, basically. That's the disconnect. If you can't find 3 extra minutes for Maxey to sit his ass on the bench so he's not exhausted by this time of year all the time, then what are we doing? That's everybody's involved. It's a nurse gets a lot of that brunt and he deserves it, but there also needs to be some blame to the front office for not even trying. Like, why are they giving him direction? Like, listen, man, give him some rest. Listen, man, let's not play our rookie that's 20 years old, 35 minutes a game when that's how much Cade Cunningham plays on a nightly basis. Maybe push him closer to 30 and get Maxey down to 35 and just figure it out. I know it's hard without Embiid and George. It is very difficult when you have like 150 million in salary that's just not playing. I understand. I'm not expecting them to be winning all the time without those guys, but I wish that the practice and the process about it was better. I wish the procedure on how they were operating was smarter. And I think the best way to do that, limit some of the minutes for them. So now, like, what am I expecting is going to happen come the playoffs with Tyrese Maxey? Am I expecting him to just be cooking, or am I expecting him to be shooting like 40% from the field, shooting only 30% from three? Like, that's what I'm expecting because he's going to be gassed. And like, it's hard to get mad at him when they don't adequately limit his minutes and give him some time off. And it's frustrating because he never sits a game. They never like let him actually miss a game. And then when he plays 38, 39, almost 40 minutes a game. And that's just it's killer long term. You have no true sense of, you know, what it works. And early in the season when that's happening, when they have the freshest legs that they'll ever have, yeah, it's great. You come out of the gate hot. It's like, man, no one can keep up with Maxi. He's just blowing by everybody. Great. What good is that in November? Who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like, I need it in April. I need it in May. I need it in March. I need it this time of year. I don't need it desperately before Christmas. I need it after the All-Star break. I need it for the stretch run. I need it for the postseason. And this is where you're at. And it's really, really frustrating.
Yeah, yeah, obviously, yeah. I mean, we agree. I
Mhm.
mean, so like future outlook. I'll say this, man. Daryl Morey, his ability to avoid accountability. Uh, that I do feel like this offseason is going to be critical, especially with the McCain move and doing the oh we couldn't do anything because of Paul George's contract, Embiid's contract, etc. To a
Yeah, it's
certain
like,
extent,
saying, "Oh, nothing materialized." Like, they apparently did try to make some all great heist of trading McCain uh
Giannis.
was gonna result in anybody, like any really good player, and quote unquote nothing materialized. And that's just I don't know. It's just not you need to materialize it. Like, you need to be the one that goes and like makes those sort of moves. You know what I mean? And they didn't it's just bad GMing where you don't have a plan in place to actually utilize what you got back from McCain.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do to add in the offseason. I mean, they're going to run back, obviously, PG, Embiid, Maxi, McCain, which I don't think.
Not McCain.
Oh,
Edgecombe.
sorry. I meant Maxi. I'm sorry. Edgecombe. Pardon me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, I just filling in the margins. I just don't have confidence in Daryl Morey's ability to properly fill it because he just makes excuses. I mean, he's a crypto bro that is a NBA like team president, you know, who because
Yeah. He just it's the fact of the matter is that uh, he's just never really fully built out
and this
the
has been the
roster
issue
super
for like
well.
at least 6 years.
Yeah, it's frustrating. We really do beat the dead horse with the Sixers, but it's true. It does feel like nothing changes. But hopefully they can get a win against the Pelicans tonight, like a really bad Pelicans team, even without their guys. And then tomorrow you get Embiid back, and that should hopefully you get Embiid back tomorrow, and that should really be a shot in the arm. But
All right,
let's
time for
pivot.
the time for the main event.
The baseball team, Philadelphia Phillies. Or should
Can't
we do the
so
Eagles? Should we do the Eagles? Because the Phillies are actually playing soon. And there's like,
sure we'll
you know
do
what I
the
mean?
Eagles.
Let's
Sure.
do the Eagles. So, some good news in terms of nothing super surprising, but like just confirmation on stuff. Lane Johnson officially back in for 2026. Very important. Landon Dickerson also officially back for 2026.
Cam
Seemingly
Jurgens is on the
important,
stem cell
hopefully.
treatments.
Yeah, Cam Jurgens has taken extreme measures for his health, which is important because he was him and Dickerson were an absolute atrocity last season, and a lot of that, in large part, was I think due to their health, and I think that also negatively affected everybody else on the offensive line. Steen had a down season, Mailata had a bad season, and I think a lot of that was due to the fact that those two guys were playing next to a couple of scrubs, and like you know the team the almighty Eagles offensive line that we all, we've heard about for the last like decade or whatever, like it is only as true as when, you know, the guys are actually performing at their best. The name value of Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens really grew sour last year for people that were paying attention. Um, and I think that really, that caps a lot of your stuff, especially the way the Eagles tried to run offense last year through the ground game, and they weren't able to do it. But those 2 guys or 3 guys are all, back and hopefully getting better and etcetera. Um, but the Eagles did make some coaching retentions, which I can't say I'm super enthused about. The first one being Aaron Moorhead, returning as the wide receivers coach. I'll be honest, I think I hate that. Like, I really, really dislike that. I don't know if that's just an appease Nick situation, if that's really what Howie thinks is best, if whatever the case may be.
Well, I think the
I
issue is
dislike it.
you
I
hired
dislike it a lot.
you hired an OC late in the coaching cycle, and I guess there's not that many great candidates to replace him as of right now.
Just bring a guy with you. Just bring a quality control guy to be, you know what I mean? Like, I and literally anybody else, I'll be honest, because it's not like, oh,
I mean, I
Moorhead's like
agree with you.
middle
I
of the
mean,
road. Like,
we
no, he's
agree,
bottom of the barrel. He stinks.
and I just find it odd that it's like you're not letting Nick pick the OC, but you're going to let the coach keep the wire. Like it's like, hey, the most important thing we're not going to let you pick, but it's almost like when you were
It's playing two-player video game with the controller unplugged. You know what I mean? Like,
or
it's
I was gonna say when you were like 2 or 3 years old, when your mom or dad put the driving wheel on the passenger side and let you pretend like you were driving.
yeah, exactly. It's yes, exactly. It's telling your little it's the little sibling mode in
I
video
mean,
games. Like,
I
it's
mean, truthfully though, I do think that the Moorhead thing's not. ideal. And I feel bad for the next offensive line coach because the moment the Eagles give up a game with like 4 or 5 sacks, that guy's going to get buried. Like
Yeah.
Chris
Yeah.
Cooper's going to get buried.
Yeah,
And
I guess we didn't talk about that, but I do wanna finish on Moorhead and then talk about the other retention with the coaching before we get to him. It's just the Eagles receivers, as, like, much as we love them and as really talented and great as they are, the little things and the details that they were doing were just a disaster. It's been a disaster for a couple years now. Clear out routes are always run pretty lazily. Like when plays aren't designed to go to them, like none of them really run their routes hard. And this applies to everybody. I know everyone's just going to assume, oh yeah, that's AJ Brown for you. But like Devonta Smith does it too. Absolutely, Jahan Dotson does it all the time. Goddard did it as well. Like no one was exempt from lazy routes and poor blocking on screens and you know how many false starts did the receivers have and pre-snap penalties and like they don't fight through contact because like they fight through contact in a way of just trying to make the catch but not trying to draw a penalty and like that's clearly being taught. Like I'm sure the teaching point with Moorhead and especially with two great receivers that are very confident in their abilities, that conversation probably is like, listen, you can't rely on the refs to give you a call. You need to just go up and make every catch. You need to go up and just make a play. Go get the ball. Go catch the ball. Don't worry about trying to draw a penalty. And it's like that's bad coaching in my opinion. That's bad strategy. I think yes, obviously try to catch everything, but sometimes the ball is not, it's not great ball placement or it's a really tough catch and you're in a really good position to fight through a D-back and draw a penalty by jumping back into him when we know that gets flagged all the time. And the fact is that they'll run and let their one hand get held down and they won't like flail like, "Oh, I'm getting held." Like they don't do that because they're like too prideful for it. They're like, I'm still going to catch this with one hand. And then they don't. And we're like, oh, how'd they miss this call? How'd they miss this flag? And it's like, yeah, man, when you zoom in and slow mo it and we
I'm
see they
not.
grab their hand, they how many true times do we see them draw pass interferences over the last few years? And I'm sure the numbers are a little bit better than what it actually feels like it is when we watch it. But the truth is that we tune into games all around the league and we see, oh, what a dumb play by the corner. What a stupid play by the corner. He's all over the guy. He's mugging him totally. And then when you watch an Eagles game, we don't see it until, like, the replay when it's like, "Oh, yeah, he was really grabbing him," because they don't draw the penalty. They don't really put on an acting
I thought
show.
Michael, realistically, I thought the reason the Eagles receivers don't get uh, draw many pass interference penalties is because the tush push was unregulated and
I mean,
they
if we wanna go into the conspiracy for it, sure, but I do think when we watch it, how many times do you see AJ Brown or Devonta Smith, like, throw their hands up when they're getting grabbed? 0, like, genuinely 0. We see them stick out one arm and try to make one-handed catches or try to just kinda box them out like it's
yeah, but
a
let's
like
say
it's a
they threw their
rebound.
arms up and they still get the flag and then it gets picked or they don't it's going to be even worse because then people are just going to complain, oh, he didn't even try to fight through the contact, you know.
Well, I mean, that's just because this
It
fan base is the
to me I
worst.
feel like that's a little too nitpicky.
Okay.
Let's
Well,
move forward. Let's
Parks
move forward.
Frazier Parks Frazier, they also retained, was the passing game coordinator last year, and as we all know, the Eagles' passing game was just incredible in 2025. Um, he's being promoted to quarterbacks coach. He really is going down, like, the Patullo path here, and after the Jeff McClain article, which, listen, sometimes you take with a grain of salt, sometimes you gotta believe what he says, whatever. When he was kinda hinting at Jalen tuning out younger coaches from time to time, and it was like Kellen Moore was one of the only ones that kinda knew how to deal with it and whatever. I just think the plan should have been and I think it was initially, was to hire a older quarterbacks coach. I think that was, like, part of why they hired Scott Loeffler, and we saw in the Hard Knocks stuff, Jalen kinda sharing the true feelings of what he wanted to do, like, "We better let that shit rip, we better be aggressive all the time." He was saying a lot of that stuff to Loeffler, was giving Loeffler a lot of looks, like, I think his, old school work ethic and whatever, I think that favors sometimes older coaches, and you don't have, like, an old offensive coach in that building, like, at all. Like, all the guys are really, really young. Head coach, offensive line coach, quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, all these guys are really young. And, not that that's the biggest deal in the world, but I just don't think promoting a guy from last year, especially from a department that struggled insanely to be the quarterbacks coach was super important. Now, it was a good idea, I mean. Now I will say, perhaps, Sean Mannion being a former quarterback just as recent as, 3 years ago and, like, very quarterback heavy as an offensive coordinator, I'm sure he'll handle a lot of duties that a normal quarterbacks coach would do in a different sort of coaching structure. So maybe that's why they didn't feel it was as important to land someone else. Um, but again, we'll see it come around by, like, August and September and all the vibes around it and stuff. But it just to me, I'm just not super excited about promoting a guy really that was a part of what was one of the worst units in football, which was the Eagles' passing attack. And, like, that's not that's
Well,
not
the
super
big thing,
exciting to me.
the big thing with this Eagles offensive staff is Sean Mannion's gonna install his version of the McVay Shanahan offense, and
Mhm.
Josh Grizzard is going to be the pass game coordinator.
Yeah. I'll be right
Which
back, Joe.
okay,
Keep talking about.
yeah. So he's essentially exactly. So I do feel to a certain extent the way the Eagles are going to handle their offense is going to be very more similar to how the Rams or the 49ers structure their offense. However, I think Michael would agree if he was here. Again, like what's Sirianni's role in all this? Because it does feel like the Eagles are going to kind of tear up the foundation of their offense and then rebuild it to something more akin to what we see with the Rams and then what we also see with the Niners. And what would that exactly entail? Like we would imagine the Eagles would score more points, but the Eagles have kind of had the same structure for so long. And in football, like it, especially for offenses, it takes a little while. Did you hear everything I said when you were?
No, I did not.
Okay, so what I basically said was I was like, while we agree that the changes are needed, I will say this: kind of looking at the roster, the Eagles don't have much cap space at the moment, but
Yeah.
there's obviously been tweets by like Shane Haff and other guys that follow the team on Twitter. They mentioned things the Eagles can do to clear up cap space. Um, like extend Jordan Davis would free up cap space. That would be awesome. Cutting Michael Carter, he will not be on the roster next year. I will guarantee that. And
Yeah.
then the if they re-sign Dallas Goddard, that would.
There's also some roster manipulation they can
And
do
then we
with
saw the
Goddard
roster
too.
manipulation that they can do, like making him a post June 1st cut by giving him a
Heavy
poison.
extension, poison pill, like a bunch of stuff,
Which
and
we think which listen, Howie Roseman is probably gonna do because he's done it for the last
I will
15 years. I don't
I will
really.
say that with that stuff, it is a dep like, they're gonna have to pay Goddard, like, 20,000,000 at some point. Eventually, he's going to receive $20,000,000 in total from the Eagles, and it's a matter of giving it to him this year or doing this poison pill tactic, giving him only 7 or so this year and then 13 next year, and, like, again, that 13 next year, that's a 2027 Howie Roseman issue, that's something that he can kick further down the line, I'm sure, but you gotta factor in some stuff that, would you rather just pay the 20,000,000 this year and just get it and be done with it, and then next year you're operating like we know extensions are coming within the next couple seasons for some big time Eagles players, and maybe he wouldn't want that 13,000,000 hanging over his head next season when he's trying to hand out extensions as opposed to maybe not dying to give out multiple extensions this year. You know what I mean? So I think
I
there's
yes,
there's there's options. It's
and
not it's not like the 20,000,000 is the most crippling thing ever from Goddard this year.
and I'm going to say this too, Michael, is when you look at I saw ESPN's list for the top 50 NFL free agents. Dallas Goedert wasn't even on that list, despite having a career year last year.
I mean, that seems like a bit of a farce, I will
And that
say.
seems really disrespectful. However, it kind of leads me to believe that Goddard, if he were to leave, he's probably not like he's what going to go to the Giants for like I don't even know because it feels like every team in the NFL, most of them are pretty settled at tight end, and like are the Titans going to be like? I mean, the Titans have tight ends. I'm trying to go like the worst teams in the league. Like
I
if
mean, I don't think he's 30, you know what I mean? I don't think he's totally just destined to go to the worst team in the league. I think a team like Denver could really use Dallas Goedert, you know what I mean?
if you look at Denver,
That'd
like
be a great fit.
that would be a great fit for him too. But like Kyle Pitts is a free agent. Do they want to
Sure.
go and overpay for Kyle Pitts? They kind of can because they got Bo Nix on a rookie contract.
I
That might
think the Chiefs could be a team that would make a lot of sense for Goddard too, you know, with Kelsey on his way out and, you know, the receiver room isn't getting any nicer, you know, maybe Baltimore could get Goddard. Well, I guess they still have Andrews, but like Likely's leaving probably soon. There, I think there's
like
destinations for
Njoku's going to be a free agent.
like the
Like,
Chargers. That could make sense too. Pair him with Gadsden while Gadsden's pretty cheap, and that could be a pretty
but then that's the
dynamic
thing. If a
weapon.
team's going to bring him in to pair with another tight end, why wouldn't the Eagles just keep him? Because they're going to draft a tight end, most likely on day two,
Because
maybe
the Eagles
day
don't want to
one
pay
with
him that sort
Kenyon
of money.
CD.
Like they don't want to pay him that sort of money, and nor do I think they should. Like I think his blocking really took a hit this year, and with the new offensive line or offensive game plan, and the tight ends are going to need to be able to block like simply, and the tight ends were truly atrocious last year in terms of blocking on all fronts, and I, looking at the McVay, Shanahan, Packers, whatever you want to look at offenses, those are hinge greatly on the tight ends being like extra offensive linemen at times. And that's something the Eagles just did not have the capability to do. And I don't think Goddard necessarily kind of fills that hole. I do think they don't view it as worth it to extend that asset at a time where their offense is going to go through a bit of a transition. But regardless, I do think Goddard is gonna have some places to go, and we'll see what they end up doing with the cap, but in terms of, like, the roster, they have free agents that are pretty key, Goddard being one, but we don't think he's gonna be back unless they do another one-year situation, but, again, he just had his prove-it year and had a really great one, so I don't think that he's gonna need to do, like, another one. Um The big ones that they're also not gonna sign is like Nakobe Dean, like, I doubt that he's brought back at all. They have, Jahad Campbell, who's
Reed.
expected to be, in there, and obviously, Trotter Jr. is a nice depth piece. They like how he's come along, and the other big free agent that I will say I don't think is like I think he's really up in the air on if they're gonna keep him or not. I think they'd like to keep him because of how important he is, like you said, Reed Blankenship. Um that's a guy I wanna keep, I'll be honest. I know maybe last year wasn't his best season as an Eagle, and I know that, paying safeties is not the fun, flashy thing to do. However, you saw how important it was and how much the secondary took a hit when he was out. And granted, a lot of that came from playing Sidney Brown, who truly is an atrocious defensive football player. Um,
Yeah, no
but
arguments here.
but he does feel like the glue that holds that whole unit together. He does feel like the
He
communication
Reed
goes to
Blankenship
shit when
played
he's out.
better. Reed Blankenship played better when Marcus Epps came in after Andrew Makuba was injured.
Yeah, yeah, Epps really solidified that back end too, but it's like when Blankenship was out, it was cooked. It was truly horrible what was going on back there, and, I think Makuba's a nice future piece, but Makuba doesn't play the same position Blankenship plays. Like, they're 2 different safeties, and I think, Makuba's gonna get better and whatever, but I think it would be a big hole to fill in terms of, like, the communication aspect from the center fielder on defense, like, you can wanna give that to you don't really give that to an outside corner because they can't see the whole field super well all the way on the boundary, and you don't wanna give it to a nickel because, again, they're usually closer to the line of scrimmage in the slot where you don't see the whole picture, you're not communicating, both sides super well the way a safety can. And I don't think Makuba's gonna be in that spot. I don't know many guys that are available to get better at that spot either. So I would like to keep Reed Blankenship. I definitely would be worried a bit if they don't keep him. So we'll see what they end up doing with that. We'll see how much he ends up getting paid truly, but, overall, I do think it would be in their best in their best interest to keep Reed Blankenship.
I agree. Now, we'll talk more about the draft when we get closer, and obviously when free agency happens. And Michael, less than a month,
Mhm.
the league year kicks off. Do you feel good? Would you feel good going into 2026 with the Eagles if maybe they were to make a couple free agency additions? I think they're going. The trend that they've been having is every other year they make moves in free agency or via trade.
Mhm.
Like entering 2024, they signed Saquon Barkley, right?
Sure.
They picked up Zach Bond.
Mhm.
They drafted Cooper DeJean and Quinyon, right? Last year it was more quiet because they re-signed Bond and they just didn't
They
have as many
gave him a
draft.
raise. You know, they gave Barkley a raise, that was also pretty expensive.
We gave Barkley a rate exactly. Like this year now feels like a okay. Where can the Eagles fill in the margins? For example, maybe bringing in like basically whoever they're going to sign in free agency or add is going to determine who they're going to pick in April. I strongly believe. So if they don't bring in, let's say, a right guard, because I think Steen really fell off at the end of the year, and the fact that Becton beat him out for a starting position 2 years ago, that they're not married to him, and now that Jeff Stoutland is no longer the offensive line coach, I think it stands to reason that they're gonna maybe want more veterans because you don't have the guy that can just
Yeah, they
develop
might they might wanna get Isaac Seumalo back, that sorta style of a move.
more established players. I think
Sure.
too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked, although I don't think Steen was the biggest defender last year at all, but I could see them wanting to improve that spot. I do agree that they're gonna make some moves in free agency. I don't think it's gonna be super marquee, though. I do think they're planning on having like, we both think they might overcorrect a little bit with the offensive line in the draft, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to have another it's one of those things that's actually it's tough to because you never like going into a draft with very obvious needs. That's like a rule or whatever. But they did in 2024, and then they just nailed their 2 draft picks with Quinyon and Cooper DeJean, their first 2 draft picks, and it's like, I don't think, again, they have glaring holes like that, it's not like, "Well, we had
No,
Sled,
this
we
is no.
definitely need a second."
This past year was a coaching issue, not a oh man, like our secondary was so bad. Or the only issue I think the Eagles have, or one thing what's one thing that the Eagles lack that a lot of other good teams possess is that I would say a an edge rusher that could threaten 10 or 12 sacks in a season. Like, no offense to Nolan Smith and even Jalix Hunt, but like you hear all these trade rumors. People are like, okay, what's a place Max Crosby can go to? I'm just going to throw that out there, right? The one team that people think is a perfect fit would be the Eagles, because could you imagine him in the same pass rush as like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan
I mean,
Smith.
like, we experienced it. You know what I mean? We had Hassan Reddick not too long ago who was getting 15
But he's
sacks a
better than
season.
Hassan Reddick.
I understand that. I'm just saying, like, it's not something, like, totally foreign to the Eagles at the moment, when they still had Fletcher Cox at a high level and Brandon Graham was younger and, Josh Sweat, like, another guy, Josh Sweat, like, really good guy. I don't disagree that it's probably the only thing they truly don't have is, like, an elite pass rusher, but the weird thing about this Fangio defense, it seems to be an every year situation where the pass rush starts the year pretty slow. They're not getting a ton of pressure with 4, and they gotta send blitzes a little more than they'd like to just to get some heat on. And then as the year progresses, it seems like they do get better. They get stronger as the season goes on. No, all of a sudden, Jalen Hunt's winning a lot quicker, and Nolan Smith is getting healthier, all that sort of stuff. And it did feel like the pass rush got better as things went on. Obviously, added Jalen Phillips that helped a lot too to give you a nice little shot there. But I don't disagree. They could definitely use like a premier edge rusher, and I think they could maybe draft one in the first 2 days potentially if it falls the
I
right
think
way. But
Jalen Phillips, from what I've read, I think Jalen Phillips is going to get priced out because you're not going to overpay to keep Jalen Phillips, even though he loves Fangio and he was very happy to be here. I just think that if a
it's
team
not worth it. I think there's risk
like
too.
if the
Like
Raiders are going to trade Max Crosby, they have a ton of cap space, they're just going to overpay for Jalen Phillips.
sure,
Like you're not going
sure.
to turn down like life changing money just because you like this team, and you like the DC. Who, by the way, this is probably his last year coaching.
Yeah, like it would behoove them to make sure their shit's together by the season start. But
Correct.
um,
So
but
let's. So I think this is the perfect time to move on to the baseball team, and we'll wrap up
yeah,
the show.
yeah. So oh boy, I guess what have the Phillies done? What have the Phillies done so far?
Well,
Let's
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 talk.
let's be
I think
honest
here's
about
what
it.
we should do. Let's let's just be brutally honest. The Phillies really did not do a whole lot this offseason in terms of adding outside talent to this team.
Offensively,
Offensively.
I'm gonna fight the fight for the Phillies a little bit with some of the stuff that they did because I do think the bullpen is like sizably better, even though it wasn't even that bad last year. I do think that it's very good, and I think that pitching they're going to be great. I really do think they're going to be really at top of the league again pitching, and I think they cleaned up some of their issues. But offensively, sure, definitely some stuff to be desired. Let's start with the pitching because it's positive. Um, the Phillies bullpen is going to be better. And I know people, no one wants to hear anything and no one cares about a bullpen guy that's not a big name until they actually start pitching well, in the casual eye. But the fact of the matter is that they're going to get Juan Duran for a full season in 2026 versus only half the season. John, I don't know if you saw the tweet or saw the article, but can you name me the last Phillies reliever to have 30 saves in a season?
Would that happen to be Mr. Jonathan Papelbon?
No, not that far back. But funny enough, it is a worse name. In 2016, this was accomplished by none other than Genmar Gomez. And it's been, we're at a decade since they had a 30 save pitcher in the bullpen. And not that the bullpen has always been a disaster. Obviously, there has been some disaster seasons, but they're going to like that's going to be broken. Juwan Duran, I'd like to think, is going to get more than 30 saves this season and should be, it's going to be great. It's going to be really nice to have a guy for a full year that you're not going to have to worry about. And they added Brad Keller, who really is good and has been good, and I do think is a nice fit. To appease some of the boomer fans out there, Rob Thompson has made it pretty clear that they're going to have assigned roles in the bullpen and, whatever. But they're going to have Duran for the ninth. They're going to have Keller, Alvarado, seventh, eighth, with Keller throwing most eighth innings because he does get both sides out, um, righties and lefties at a very high rate. He's not like a can't get lefties out sort of guy. And then they have, their Tanner Banks, their Orion Kerkering kind of slotted in that like fifth, sixth inning role, as well as like Jonathan Bowlen. And then you're going to be, you have your Kyle Backhouse that they're going to see what they got. And Tim Mesa is going to be competing for one of those last reliever spots as well. The truth is that it doesn't feel like they're going to have as many disaster arms as they've had in years past. Not that, like, the high-end guys were ever bad, but it was true that if they weren't ahead or they weren't tied, that, they would turn to not their best arms in the bullpen just for the sake of, like, well, we wanna keep Strom and Kerkering and, Alvarado and, whoever for when we're winning, or when we're tied, as opposed to we're down a couple runs. I don't wanna throw my best guys all the time, and, like, usually, they couldn't hold a lead or hold a deficit, um, I should say, to a reasonable amount, and they'd end up losing, and it is what it is. John, 4 pitchers in the Phillies bullpen that are not on the team anymore threw an alarming amount of innings at a very bad clip. Joe Ross threw 51 innings, Jordan Romano threw 42 and two-thirds innings, Carlos Hernandez threw 25 and two-thirds innings, and Jose Ruiz threw 14 and one-third inning.
It's a
That
lot of
is a
schlock.
combined 133 and two-thirds innings for an ERA at 6.46. That's a lot of innings of slop. And if you want to throw in a starter duo that made 23 starts of 119 innings, Aaron Nola and Mick Abel threw 119 innings at a 5.81 ERA. That's 6 pitchers that threw over 10 innings for an ERA well over 5, between the 6 of them. And when you look at what you're expecting this year, I just don't think your bad relievers are going to be that much of a disaster. I said it the last few episodes we talked about the Phillies, but people forget they were winning a lot of games early in the season with Jordan Romano as the, like, dedicated closer for months, and that is something that is just better by a massive margin this season. You know what I mean? Like, the only 2 guys that are currently slotted in where you're not expecting them to really give you a ton, that are going to be pitching a decent bit of innings this year, are Taijuan Walker and Max Lazar. And Max Lazar is your go-to throw an inning or 2 when a game's out of hand because we just gotta get outs, and Taijuan's obviously your long man, your spot starter here and there. You're not expecting a ton out of either of those guys. Now you have guys that you are expecting good things out of that could be pretty bad, like, just because it's a possibility in the nature of baseball. Andrew Painter being one of them. We'll talk about him a little bit more later. Aaron Nola obviously was brutal, and you expect a bounce back season from him. You expect, the velocity to tick back up again. I'll be paying
Yeah,
attention closely.
so
Orion Kerkering,
yeah.
the mental side of thing could be bad. Jose Alvarado, we saw good and bad, and we saw whatever suspension PED issue. Tanner Banks could come back down to earth. Jonathan Bowlen, those guys, they could be disasters, and it could be like, oh man, I think the left-handed relievers in the Phillies bullpen, I don't think that ceiling is as high as when it was like Matt Strom and Alvarado from a couple years ago. But I do think that you have enough guys like, I think Banks, what he provided you last year is something that's repeatable. I think there is a path to Alvarado being very productive again. And I think I'd like, from my preference, I think Kyle Backhouse and his very funky delivery and his velocities up a little bit from last year so far in the spring. I think those are pretty viable options. And it's fine enough when you have 2 righty relievers in Duran and Keller that can get both righties and lefties out at a high enough clip. So when you look at the bullpen and you look at what it was last year and you look at what it's going to be this year, the odds of there being 4 guys that are truly disasters, but are going to be pitching significant enough innings the first couple months of the season, I just think those odds are extremely lower entering this season than they were entering last season. And when you factor that in with the pitching rotation, the starting rotation that's still gonna be really good, I like, I just think that we're gonna not be having to sweat as hard late in games the way we kinda had a little bit. And it's one of those things where you're leaning into your strengths. You know, you have the strength has been the pitching staff for a couple years now, and the lineup has been what everyone gets worried about all the time, and that's very valid. But the truth is that sometimes when you lean far enough into your strengths, it does cover up some of the mistakes. And listen, you're going to have to win some playoff games 2-1. You're going to have to win some playoff games 1-0, 3-1, 3-2, whatever. You're going to have to grind out some low scoring, ugly playoff wins. And you have the pitching to do so. You really, really do. Um, and I think we should see it kind of for a full season. You know, it shouldn't be super up and down. I think they're going to be able to consistently pitch very well for an entire season.
So, okay, sorry, while you were talking, I was just pulling up my notes. Yeah, I'm not really worried about the pitching staff. I don't think anyone should. If we look at things like you brought up guys that gave like most of the guys you mentioned that were like basically garbage juice are all gone,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
And look, I think Brad Keller, I think that's an intriguing pickup. I think that, is could pay really good dividends.
Excuse me.
Especially for a guy at the sixth, seventh inning that's going to maybe give you great balls, so you don't have to, rely on your
I
starting
wanna say he's gonna
pitchers,
be a good setup guy for you, like
give you, have to go deep into games all the time like they had to do last year. That was
mhm.
partially why, Aaron Nola kind of, had his first real bad year as a professional. He's thrown a lot of innings. Now, from my understanding of Aaron Nola entering this spring training, is that he's in great physical condition. Last year, he hurt his ankle. That was the why he had trouble pushing off the mound, and his ankle would start to give out on him. You know, shocker
Mhm.
during the fourth inning.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's why he was bad. And we know about Aaron Nola. He's kind of a kind of a weird guy. Uh, he wears
The
the
way to
same
put
pair
it.
of socks for like a month because he's afraid of changing them or getting them washed, like stuff like that. So, look, I mean, he doesn't strike me as the type of guy who's like, oh, I got the extension. I'm just going to phone it in for the next 7 years. No, that doesn't strike me as that type of guy.
No, not at all.
I think if Aaron Nola bounces back, that's going to be such a massive boost for this team. Because look, Ranger Suarez left and signed with the Boston Red Sox, and I think the reason why Aaron Nola didn't really kill you all that much last year is because you had for until he got injured, Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, and Ranger Suarez gave you a lot of quality innings.
Yeah, for what you got obviously, we all love Ranger. Ranger, fan favorite forever, all that sort of stuff, amazing. You love his playoff moments and playoff heartbeat, all that stuff. But the truth is that sometimes the regular season for Ranger it's frustrating. It really is because he'll give you some great moments and he'll look really, really good, and, like, then he'll look fatigued and not as good, and you just gotta like, he either has to just be hurt and, like, not pitch at all or whatever, and, like, the the thing like, you're not what you're missing with Ranger Suarez isn't 200 plus innings of sub 3 ERA ball. It's more like one like 30 to 150 of, you know, 3 ERA ball, and, like, that's still really, really nice, but the fact is that it's not, like, impossible to replace, and especially a guy like Nola who, hopefully can give you around a buck 80 innings and, like, an ERA, that's comfortably under 4. You feel pretty good about that in terms of a bounce back, and the big thing with him is obviously the velocity because the velocity took a tick and everyone was really just kind of foaming at the mouth. Like, I was looking at some of his numbers deep dive on Baseball Savant and looking at some of those underlying metrics, and it's like the big thing for him is that the velocity dip happened and everyone was just pulling everything. Everything was getting pulled. His uh his pull rate went up such an obscene amount from last year to this year. Um Aaron Nola in like let me find pull. Aaron Nola, his pull rate in 2022, which was really, really good, 39.3%. 2023, 42.4%, still pretty good. And 2024 went up to 46%. 48% of the balls put in play were being pulled against Aaron Nola. 48, almost half of balls put in play against Nola were being pulled. You don't think hitters were sitting on stuff and being ready for stuff. And then you want to talk about being pulled in the air. That's the big, how do you hit home runs? You pull the ball in the air. Aaron Nola in 2022, 15.7%, 2023, 19.1%. Even that, that's not good. And what was like not a terrible season for him. But over the last 2 years, up to 22%. Like those are the metrics of the velocity takes a dip. Guys aren't like the two seam gets crushed because they don't have to worry about getting it in on them because it's only coming in at 91. You know what I mean? And the curveball still generated a ton of swing and miss last year. It really did. People were still whiffing at it. The only issue was if it wasn't in a good spot, it was getting crushed. It's not that the curveball is bad, but it's that it's coming in so slow and everything else is so slow that a hitter can really sit back on everything and piece up anything. So we saw obviously in the playoff outing, he only threw 2 innings, but what was he sitting? He was sitting 94 with a couple 95s in there. And obviously, I'm not expecting Nola to start pumping 95 for a full season, but his average fastball velocity dipped well below 92 miles an hour last year. And if he's in that range again, he's probably going to suck, like full stop. If he's only hitting 91 in his fastball consistently, he's not going to have a good year. But if that fastball velocity is back up over like 92.5, pushing 93, if it's sitting around 93 all season, I have no reason to believe he's not going to have a significantly better season and be a productive piece for you and be a productive arm. And that's probably your biggest concern with the rotation is like Aaron Nola's velocity. You feel really good about even Wheeler coming back from his injury. You want to see it, but you do feel confident about it. Sanchez, full-fledged top pitcher in baseball. Jesus Luzardo is everyone's favorite, like dark horse Cy Young pick, as he had amazing underlying metrics and was really, really good for you. Had a few blow-up starts, which kind of hindered the long season stats. And, there's enough encouraging stuff coming out about Painter at the moment to make you feel like he's going to be contributing at a high level. The biggest thing is Noah's velocity. If Noah's velocity's down, he's going to be down. If his velocity's back to normal levels, he's probably going to be pretty good again. And that's really what, I'm going to be looking at the
Yeah,
WBC.
I have Aaron Nola's game log pulled up here, and from last year, and obviously he was getting tattooed during the months of April, and
Mhm,
then he got tattooed in the month of May, and then went on the injured list, was out for 2 months, came
mhm,
back in August. His first start back, he gave up 6 earned runs in 2 innings. That was actually, I was coming back from the shore that Sunday, and it was the game the Phillies put up like 8 runs in the first inning, and he went through carved through the Nationals to start the first day. And then he just got tattooed and I had to get taken out. Coming
mhm,
back from injury. Then against the Nationals, 3 earned runs. Sorry, 2 earned runs against the Nationals in at home. Then against the Hospital Braves, he gave up 4 earned runs.
mhm,
And then in September, at Milwaukee, 6 earned runs. Then at home against, the Mets, they won 1-0. Then at home against the Royals, he gave up 6 earned runs. Then at Arizona against the Hospital Diamondbacks, 4 earned runs. And then end of the year against the Minnesota Twins, who, Michael, if you recall, the Twins got rid of half their roster in like July that
mhm,
last year, if you recall.
mhm,
He had his best start of the year. So I'm optimistic, but if we're gonna use that last start as like a barometer for this year, I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in that. It's gonna have to be him coming in feeling 100%. And realistically, Michael, they're not gonna like what I'm about to say. You're probably gonna have to load manage Aaron Nola to a certain extent.
Yeah, like, I don't think there's a reason to throw Nola like, I well, I said this last year, but it's true. I'm not if it means he's not gonna be your horse and throw you 200 plus innings, but you can get his velocity up, like, if it takes him only averaging 5, 6 innings in a start instead of 6 or 7 innings, but he's gonna be throwing, like, 93, almost 94 for most of the starts, I'll take that, man. I will absolutely sign up for that because you know why? We have enough other I'm trying not to curse because I get very but, like, you have enough other guys. You have 3 other starters that are gonna be, like, breezing through 6 innings for a lot of their season. Like, Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, and Jesus Luzardo are gonna be so breezy through 6 that, yeah, dude, if Aaron Nola's your 4th starter and he gives you 180 innings of, like, 3.5 ERA ball or 3.7 even, what are we complaining about? You know what I'm saying? I know it's the contract, but what are we actually getting all upset about? So,
I mean,
Nola's a big one.
Corbin Burns won a Cy Young doing that.
Right, right. I wanna talk about Andrew Painter, where last year
Andrew Painter or Andy Painter?
I'm gonna call him Andrew Painter. I'll be honest, I don't like the way Andy Painter
It makes
sounds,
him sound like
unless
he's
he
like from
really
Andy
wants
from
it.
Toy Story, like he's a kid.
I mean, that's his name, like, that's why, you know what I mean? He was named after Andy from Toy Story. Not kidding. Like, that his
Wow.
parents decided that back in what year he was born, like, 2001 or whatever, 1999. Um, regar excuse me. Regardless, last year, after reading that one article, it was very interesting. They it got to a point where they just stopped giving a shit what he was doing, and it was more like, "Listen, man, we just gotta get you through the innings." Like, the arm slot with the fastball is, like, totally jacked up, and that is not a problem we are here to fix. Like, it's just not important. We'll fix it in the offseason. We'll get it together. You're recovering. We just want you in your first year post Tommy John to hit this innings benchmark, and that's what it became, and they're like, "We know this sucks. We know you're getting tattooed, and it's not fun, but we just need you to throw the innings. We just need you to get your arm stretched out a little bit."
Oh, you mean like what the other two teams that have young players should do? Don't be afraid to
Regardless.
fail. We need you to learn. Go ahead. Sorry.
Anyways,
Sorry.
anyways,
Go ahead.
they screwed around with some new pitches for him, and, like, they were just trying shit. You get to this offseason, the arm slot looks back, and then that's big, because when we talk about arm slot and fastballs, it's a huge thing. Like, a fastball that is flat, it almost doesn't matter how fast it's coming in. See, like, Spencer Strider, where his fastball was very flat last year, and he got killed for it, and it's the velocity dipped. And Andrew Painter, his fastball was his best pitch. It was like compared to like Garrett Cole in terms of like the way it looks like it really rises. It looks like Zach Wheeler's a little bit. And it was flat last year and it was getting absolutely railed. And a lot of that has to do with your arm slot. And the arm slot being back, you can now live at that fastball at the top of the zone that looks like it's rising and people swing underneath it. That's awesome. That looks like it's back. That's very encouraging. The other stuff that he throws is good, but the fastball is like the big winner. It's like, Garrett Cole's slider isn't something that's like it's not Max Scherzer's, it's not, something disgusting. But when when it plays off of his nasty fastball, yeah, man, it's a whole hell of a lot harder to deal with, obviously. So that is super encouraging. And I don't know if he's going to make the opening day roster. I'm not really concerned if he does or doesn't, but I do think that he is going to be a contributing arm to this rotation, and by, like, mid-May, I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at a rotation that's Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, Aaron Nola, and Andrew Painter, and, like, I don't know, man. To me, that seems pretty good, and, like, I know it's gonna suck, no Ranger, that really is gonna be upsetting, but, like, I do think that they're gonna have enough pieces that are gonna cover up for it, and then, as long as they pitch well in October, no one will really be too beat up about it, I'll say. Um,
Can I?
but
I want to bring something up about Andrew Painter though too. Can
sure.
I? Andrew Painter is probably the most highly touted Phillies pitching prospect since people started talking about baseball prospects seriously. This is where
Yeah.
so Brett Myers, and this is like 25 years ago, Michael. He was
Mhm,
ranked like in the 30s when the Phillies called him up. It was a big deal when he got called up because
mhm.
at that time the Phillies just had schlock for starting pitching. Then Cole
Yeah.
Hamels got called up. He was ranked in the same area. Andrew Painter at one point was ranked in like the top 20 before his injury, if I
Mhm.
recall. People were
Yeah.
talking about him like, okay, like Skeens is going to be the best pitcher, but Andrew Painter's like number two,
Sure. Sure.
right?
Mhm.
It's going to be a big deal when he gets calls up to make his first MLB start. Like, if we're going to crap on the Phillies for being boring or whatever, people complaining, like you're going to watch Andrew Painter's first start. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Let's pivot to the offense because that's obviously the biggest point of contention with this team. Now, in the offseason, they really only added Adolis Garcia and pretty much it, in terms of, outside additions. They kept everything else the same. They tried Bo Bichette. Steve Cohen confirmed it. Like, the Phillies did kinda get jerked by him. Like, it's tough. Steve Cohen, they struck out on Tucker, and they didn't even call. Like, Bo Bichette and his brass called the Mets, been like, "Hey, the Dodgers were gonna give him this if you wanna give it to him," and he was like, "Yeah, sure, sign me up," and then, like, the Phillies just kinda got screwed. Regardless, they only added Adolis Garcia, and I know that's a very polarizing pick. I will say,
You're not going to throw Brian De La Cruz in there?
sure, I mean, he's gonna be on the minor leagues, but, he's a guy that could
I
maybe give us
think
some pop.
Gelb or Salisbury predicted
Want
that
him to make
he's
the team over Kemp?
over Rojas. He will be the primary backup outfielder
I mean, I didn't even consider Rojas to really make the team, to be completely honest with you. I was thinking the bench was gonna be
because
Kemp.
Otto Kemp plays first, third, and left field.
Yeah, I was expecting the bench to be Kemp, Sosa, backup catcher. You know what? Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. De La Cruz can take that.
The Phillies got rid of three outfielders that played a significant amount of games for them. Max Kepler, Harrison Bader, who was like their everyday center fielder in the second half of the year once he was acquired, and then your boy Nick Castellanos.
Right. And it wasn't a good outfield last year. On paper, it's not a great outfield this year. However, I want to try to keep this positive.
Oh no, I want to talk about the Castellanos thing. We're not going to just
Uh,
pretend. We
okay. Well, I mean, I feel all right. All right. We can get
we're sort of ignore. It's like there's a train crash and you're just ignoring it, so we could talk
all right.
about
Well, let's rip it off then. I mean, Nick Castellanos, fact of the matter was clearly a headache to deal with, and everyone felt so. And like all the interviews that you get, like the answers you're getting from Schwarber, which I could very easily see Bryce being pissed off at him. Absolutely, no doubt about it. That makes sense to me. Schwarber, on the other hand, that is a little surprising because he seems like a very, big teammate guy, very, willing to deal with all types of personalities, not really, feeling any highly negative way towards anybody individually. And when he gets asked, was the Castellano stuff a distraction last year? And his answer is basically, it's really hard to say.
it.
That to
Instead of
me
just
is like,
saying
okay,
no,
man.
instead of just
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
no, it wasn't. You know,
It's hard to really it's hard to quantify or whatever. Like that's crazy. So if you really got Schwarber that thrown off by it, you clearly were doing some bad stuff. And you read the Matt Gelb article, and It's something. It's certainly something. So this all goes back to like the day they signed him, where he didn't want to be here. He did not. His dream was to get a nice long-term contract, big money with the Miami Marlins and play at home and be around his family. And like, cool, happy day. I'm not going to kill a guy for that. The Marlins weren't willing to pay him that sort of money when it was like, "Oh, it's between the Phillies and the Marlins." It's like, it really wasn't. It was between the Phillies, no one else, and Castellanos wants to go to the Marlins. And, like, that was that's really the reality versus when it was held down to, like, "Oh, is he gonna choose the Phils or the Marlins?" Marlins weren't offering him a contract or offering him any sort of money that he actually was willing to take, and it turns out that no one in the league was offering him the sort of money that the Phillies threw at him, which, like, you bid against yourself to give a guy $100 million, like, that was terrible. Um, but he never wanted to be here, and he clearly has this weird thing where he does not like you if you did not play baseball in the major leagues, which, like, extremely frustrating perspective to have, and clearly that's why he liked Joe Girardi. He was probably the only Girardi guy in the clubhouse, and it started right away with Kevin Law. Like, if I had to really guess when he really started to dislike Rob Thompson, was 2022. They fired Joe Girardi, and Rob Thompson, his probably, like, first point of contention as manager and, like, taking some authority with something was probably, like, looking at the state of the team. "We're hot right now, everything's going great, but there's one guy that just actually sucks ass still, and it's Nick Castellanos, and I wanna fix Nick Castellanos to help raise this team." And they went up to him with, like, ideas and be more patient at the plate, and he basically refused and got, like, in his feelings about, like, "Who the hell are you? You never played the game. I've been a successful professional in this league for 10 years," or how many ever years it was at that point. I don't need to listen to you." And, like, he tried it, and it didn't work out because I don't think he really gave it his whole effort, and, clearly thinking at the plate for him is not good, especially the free swinger guy. And I think that started the disdain towards Rob Thompson, even though he never dipped him in the lineup. In 2022, he hit right behind Harper the entire season. And, you know, 2023 comes around. He has a really nice first half, makes the all-star team. He's basically hitting 7th all year, and he's feeling disrespected by batting low in the order. He felt that other star players got better treatment. And it's like, because, man, as even though you were a star with the Reds, you never produced here. You genuinely never produced here. You were a true league average bat with all-world terrible defense, and you were a negative player over 4 years. And I think he's very stubborn, and I think some of that stubbornness kinda plays into not wanting to listen to coaches. And it's like, honestly, that was the most shocking part of it all, because he is very, like, old school baseball guy. "I'm here to hit. Trust my hands," all the sorta old school baseball adages. You would think that sort of player is, like, very coachable. "I wanna listen to my coaches, what they believe. I trust the process and all of it all." But I guess because they never got their hands in the dirt in a major league stadium, they weren't good enough for him. And, it all comes to a head with the getting taken out for defensive reasons, and he felt super disrespected by it, brought the beer in the dugout, didn't open whatever, all that garbage. But the fact of the matter is that the Phillies gave him a significantly longer leash than any other good team would have actually given him. You look across the league at the good, smart, well-ran teams, the Dodgers, the Astros, the Brewers, even the Yankees, and, like, those teams would not have had him playing as long as he did, like, consistently. They would have turned him into a platoon bat far sooner than the Phillies did. They would have been subbing him out for defensive reasons the Phillies far sooner than the Phillies did. They did it once in 4 years, and he threw an absolute hissy fit about it. And it's like, that drives me crazy. And, like, the anecdote about him playing music in his locker room after he had a good game and a loss, and it's like, dude, I
It's
you're trying to win a championship,
very much
stop
like,
doing it.
how do you get Philadelphia fans to turn on you? he pretty much did every possible thing that you could do.
And it still didn't even work. Like, a lot of people still really like him because he has the hype playoff moments. But the truth is that he was a bad playoff performer. Like, he had 2 good series. 2 good series his entire playoff tenure here, the 2023 NLDS and the 2024 NLDS. And that is it. Every
Well,
other
no,
series
people.
was a disaster.
The reason people are defending Castellanos is they want to use him as a talking point or like evidence that Dombrowski should be fired. But it's basic from what I've seen. It's like basically like 90 IQ people trying to like thinking they're doing like 4D chess by saying, "Oh, the Dombrowski's a joke. How could you
Excuse me.
let go of Castellanos when he hit this or basically it's like everyone knew he needed to go. Like even like you bring up, we joke about like the old school fans. The old school fans hated Castellanos because he sucked on defense and he sucked at base running.
Mhm.
And now the other guy that sucks at defense and sucks at base running that can't hit his way out of a wet paper bag in terms of power. You know who I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Now the microscope's on him and
Yeah.
Alec Bohm, which we'll
Yeah.
get to a little bit, but I want to kind of stay on the Castellanos here. To me, I pulled up I've Nick Castellanos' baseball reference up. He is like when you look up when we talk about guys that have like you know they're like they entering free agency year like the year before they enter free agency they put up monster numbers like Casty put up in 2021 with the Reds. He had 34 bombs, 100 RBIs, 28 doubles, one triple, and a 939 OPS. And he had a 362 on base percentage. By far the best on base percentage he's ever had in his career by like a significant margin, right?
Mhm.
Let me see how many walks he drew. I'm sorry.
Sure, not many.
41 walks,
Yeah,
which
no, he had 361 on base with a 309 batting average. It's not very, you know what I mean? He didn't
like
walk a ton.
everyone knew as soon as this guy got paid, he was going to either fall back into his old habits or he was just going to basically take the money and run, essentially.
He wasn't like, he has a lot of talent, a lot of God-given talent, clearly, because, it seems like an approachless bat had that really good run from 2016 to 2021, really, of 827 OPS, 811 OPS, 854 OPS, 863 OPS, 784 OPS in the shortened season, and 939 OPS before hitting free agency. And I don't know, it just, to me, he got MVP votes in 2023. That's crazy.
Like think about like that's the thing is to what I'm kind of reiterate what you're saying is that they brought him in to be an important piece, basically to bat behind Bryce Harper. That's what he was brought in
Yeah,
to do.
he was the Harper protection. That
And
was
he
what his
failed
role
at it.
was.
He just failed at it. And
Mhm.
now let's bring it forward, right? Because we're talking about the bats. Let's talk about the other issue, or maybe
Let's
it's
talk about his replacement. Let's talk about Adolis Garcia for a second.
okay.
Now, very polarizing figure, in terms of the signing. And, like, listen, I'm still in between on it because on one hand, there's a lot of evidence pointing that he is just never going to be a good hitter again. The last 2 years at the plate were, like, abysmal. And, 2023 for the Rangers feels more like a magical season as every year goes by. But the truth is that the park factor, and it's hard to determine what actually handles a park factor. But the truth is that the Rangers stadium for right-handed bats was like the worst in baseball. And excuse me, the Phillies stadium,
It's pretty good.
Citizens Bank Park, it's like ninth best in
It's
baseball for right-handed bats. You have a good reason to believe that if he just kinda
It's
pulls
still
the
a
ball in the
bandwagon.
air, yeah, if he pulls the ball in the air, he should hit a good amount of home runs, and, obviously, he's a huge individual, and I think there's a path to him just getting better. I don't think you're gonna, like, totally rework a plate approach and get him he's not gonna be, like, walking a ton or whatever, but he's gonna be able to provide you some pop, and, like, in a perfect world, he ends up hitting 4th for you and, like, is true serious Harper protection, but in a realistic world, he's gonna be in, like, that middle to bottom section of the order and should just be able to provide you some pop. He really just should be able to hit some home runs and hit some doubles and, hopefully get his OPS around league average, and you might get be like, "Oh, well, Castellanos was league average a couple times, and, we bitched and complained about him." The truth is because he was a horrible defender. Yes, he didn't make errors, but he never got to anything. That was a huge thing. The biggest improvement with this move is going to be the defense. It is going to be a different world of right field defense versus what we've seen the last 4 seasons. Like, there are so many balls that Castellanos could never get to, and his arm, he wasn't making good throws that it's like Garcia is going to get to some with ease that Castellanos would have never had a chance to get to, and he's going to make difficult catches that are like, hey, this would have been like a triple last year, and that is something that I think again, no one cares as much because it's not offense and it's the big issue, but it's going to save you runs. It's genuinely going to save you runs, and it's going to make what is a really good pitching staff and a really good bullpen even better because you're not going to have to worry about balls being hit into right field and it being a disaster because of it. And I think if he's going to provide you great defense. If he provides you the great defense and could hit you pushing 30 homers and have an OPS that's around league average or even a little above if things really go well, it's going to be a legitimate improvement, and I think we're going to feel it. I think we're going to feel it as a fan base, and we're going to feel it watching them every day. Like, oh wow, Adolis Garcia is really nice to have, and like again, that's the positive end of it.
Yeah,
The negative end, the negative end is a brutal bat, and it's like, "Man, this bat sucks," but he's really, really good in the outfield. Like, so that's still at worst, it's still an improvement, you know what I mean? Like, at the worst, it is still a better player than what Nick Castellanos was.
yeah. So I'm just gonna pull up Adolis Garcia's baseball savant. I'm kind of scared to see how blue it could potentially be because that's a good indicator of like luck, right? Like if a guy's doing certain things well and like the numbers don't show it, it's because the guy's got bad luck, right? Is
Well,
that
listen, he hits the
fair to
ball
say?
hard. He hits the ball
So
hard.
he hits the ball hard. He barrels up the ball pretty good. He hits it hard. The
You know what I mean?
problem is his bat speed is average. He chases a lot, he strikes out a lot, and he doesn't draw walks. So, in other words, he's basically Nick Castellanos if he wasn't a complete weirdo and actually could play defense. Is that like?
Listen, you gotta find his launch angle. That's the
But
biggest
he's being
issue, I
paid
think.
half of what you were paying Nick. Is
Like, the launch angle sweet spot percentage when he had his great season was in the 67th percentile. You know what I mean? Like, above average, and he had a great year because of it. And then you look at the last 2 years, it's depleted, and you look at, some of those other underlying metrics. A guy like him pulling the ball is very big, very important for him. In 2023, he pulled the ball in the air 19.9% of the time. That's really nice. In 2025, 17.9% of the time. That's a decent drop off. Ground balls. The ground ball rate took a little bit of a jump over the couple years too. And it's like the line drive, he popped up a lot bit more. Like he was hitting the ball on the ground too much and he's hitting the ball straight up in the air too much. I think you gotta find that sweet spot. You need to find the best role to line drives and stuff. And that's coaching, that's getting a little more comfortable. It's hopeful. It's definitely hopeful. The other outfielder I want to touch on Well, I don't know. Maybe we should wrap this up because we'll talk more deep dive into the Phillies,
I want to do. Let's just
in
end
the
it.
coming
Let's just
weeks.
end. Let's just end it with the Bryce thing. We're not going to avoid
Okay.
talking about it. I
No,
know.
let's end it with the Bryce thing. So Bryce is clearly frustrated. There's clearly a disconnect between him and the front office. I think Bryce is very willing and open
He's like
to
a
go to the
WIP
outfield.
caller,
Yeah.
except he's on the team.
Yeah, he clearly still thinks and wants to play the outfield and is willing to move there for the sake of signing a player. And that's like a non-negotiable for the front office. And not for nothing, I'm with the front office on this one. Like he is not to be trusted to play the outfield. I can't trust him because you could tell him, Bryce, hit the cutoff man every time. I don't care, no exceptions. You're not pushing your arm. And what are we going to see in April? He's going to be at the warning track trying to fire a ball to third base from the warning track, and it's going to be and like I just then he gets hurt and the elbow, and now you got three DHs on. You know what I mean? So I don't. I'm not doing it. I'm not putting him in the outfield. It's a non-negotiable for the front office, and it really should be because he has not he has not shown that he can be trusted to do so. So regardless, that's like a big point of contention because if he did play the outfield, that would open a door to Pete Alonso. That would open a door to other first baseman free agents potentially to get right. And the other big like that leads into the
Hey, wait!
disconnect
I
with.
said that months ago, and you were horrified by the thought of Pete Alonso being a Philly.
Of course, I didn't. Well, yeah, because again,
I'm just teasing,
no,
Michael.
I know, but it's like, Pete Alonso as a Philly meant no Kyle Schwarber in their eyes because they weren't moving Bryce to the outfield. Like, that was it. It was one of Harper and Alonso are gonna DH, and the other one's gonna play first base, and we
Even
don't
if
have
you
Kyle
go to left field,
Schwarber.
how much I mean, realistically, like how much damage can he physically? Like, dude, you literally put like the guy that's like, okay, how much least physical amount of punishment can we put on a guy besides DHing him? It's
First
left
base.
field. Well,
First base. It's first base. Like, it's the throw. It's not the legs, it's not the running, it's the arm. It is truly like, he tore his UCL, he needed Tommy John surgery. He didn't get that from hitting. He got that from playing right field. Like, it's just it is what it is. It's very frustrating, but it just is what it is. And this has led, the non-elite comments that he clearly was still upset by, which, like, don't love that, and he still is bothered by it, and felt like, that
well,
should have been an in-house
is he
thing.
bothered because he was criticized, or was he bothered
He was he was publicly criticized. That's why he's bothered.
because he was called because I explained this to friend of the show and part-time host Zach like about it is that if you look at the last year, guys that were going to get ripped for what happened last year. Trey won the batting title. He wasn't going to get ripped. You were trying to re-sign Schwarber. You're not going to publicly call out the clubhouse leader slash guy that hit 56 home runs that you need to keep. You're not going to call out Wheels because he's hurt. And
You know what I'm gonna say? You don't need to call anybody out. How about that? Why do we need
I
to call
agree.
anybody out?
I agree. But the GM, who literally has just sat on his hands the team president that sat on his hands, was going to. That's another problem we see a lot of too, Michael, is it seems like he kind of wanted to put it on Bryce, maybe because, like, I don't know. It's not like Bryce showed up out of shape.
No, it's not that. It's he said it publicly, and, like, they asked about Harper, and he gave, like, "Oh, not an elite season. We'll see what he do." Like, Harper, I think when he signed here and they talked about a big thing, keeping things in-house, and, like, I think that was a big conversation with, like, the media related stuff and the fans where people are like, "Listen, we know that the media and fans take stuff and they run with it in, like, crazy droves." And I think that led to Harper, like, we say every time Harper talks, that's a big pander fest. I think it's just because he knows where he's at, and he knows if he says something wrong, it's gonna catch a lot of crap.
Do you
And
do you
you know,
think?
he
Sorry, go
said
ahead.
Dabrowski said something that could have been an in-office conversation. That could have been like, "Listen, Bryce, like, We love you. We want you, but by your standards, maybe you had a down year. And like, I think a lot of it was rooted in some not great luck. You look at his savant, it's not very different from his great years, but
I
that's a
forget.
conversation to have behind closed doors and then get
Well,
him motivated from it. This
let me
public
ask you.
shit.
Well, let me ask you this. If I don't, I'm trying to remember. Was Dombrowski asked, does he think Bryce is still an elite player? Did he just come out and say it out of left field? Like, you look at the Flyers with the whole Mitchkov stuff. Taka just says stuff when he's not even prompted to, you know? Like the media is trying to give him softball questions that he's just whiffing on. Where Dombrowski realistically should have been ripped or, let's say, kind of held accountable.
Well, he was on like the question he was asked, uh the question he was asked by a reporter is, "What was the view on Harper's season, and why do you think it was maybe a down season and like not a downward trend for him?" And he said, "He's still a quality player. He's still an all-star caliber player. He didn't have an elite season like he's had in the past, and I guess we only find out if he becomes elite or continues to be good. If you look around the league, I think Freddie Freeman, really good player, still a good player. Is he elite like he was before? Probably not to the same extent. Freddie's tremendous, and that to me is Bryce. Can he rise to that next level again? I don't know the answer. He's the one that will dictate that more than anything. I don't think he's content with the year he's had. And again, it wasn't a bad year, but when you think of Bryce Harper, you think of elite. You think of one of the top 10 players in baseball, and I don't think this season fit into that category. But again, a very good player. I've seen players at his age, not that he's old, level off, but I've also seen guys rise again. Like, not for nothing. What the hell you were asked about his season and why you think it would only be a down year, not the end of his career.
Why did he go on to give this like freaking sermon about it?
Exactly. So that's what Harper got upset at. And like
All he
Val
had
to be
this is
upset.
all he had to say was Bryce Harper's still an elite player. Other teams treat him like
He
he's
didn't
an elite
he didn't need to
player.
use the word elite. Like,
Even if the numbers may not back it up, he's still an elite player, and I expect
all
him
he
to
had
be
to
an elite
say
player.
was, by his standards and by, whatever, maybe it wasn't the best year for him, but we still have the utmost belief that he's gonna produce for a high level and, and like and that would have been it. I don't think anything would have ran with that because it's true. By his standards, it wasn't his best season. That's all you had to say. But he went on this whole, like you said, a sermon, this whole like thought piece of what is an elite player, like elite or not elite. And it's just like, what are we
Yeah, it's
saying
like
right
he's
now?
almost auditioning for like an like MLB network job when he's done working for the Phillies.
Right. So
Like talk it. It's like the exact same thing.
So he, makes the comments. Harper's still not happy about it, and it leads to, a report that comes out yesterday that Bryce is like at this point, it's like he's desperate. He's desperate for someone behind him to be an actual hitter that teams are scared of, and essentially not Alec Bohm. Like, I want to have a four hitter that hits behind me that is a threat to hit a home run, so teams pitch to me more. Like, he's sick of getting pitched out of the zone. He gets frustrated. It leads to him chasing, and it's a disaster. He wants someone that's threatening hitting behind him. And like, listen, man, maybe I would have Bryce hit two and Schwarber hit three because I think it affects Schwarber a little bit less. But
You should bat Bryce Harper.
is it any surprise? Is it any surprise that Kyle Schwarber hit 56 home runs the year that he hit directly in front of Bryce Harper? I'm sure that's not a coincidence either, not for nothing. So when you have and like he wanted them to acquire one. And listen, they tried to go get Bo Bichette. If they had Bo Bichette, are we having any of these same conversations? Genuinely. If the Phillies pulled off the Bichette deal and they traded Bohm for it almost doesn't even matter. But Bo Bichette was going to be your starting third baseman on opening day, and he was going to hit fourth behind Bryce Harper. What is the conversation around the Phillies right now?
Oh, they made this all in move because they think they can beat the Dodgers because we lost to the Dodgers because we needed somebody to get those
And
key hits.
what's the fan vibe? Is the fan vibe so miserable the way it is right now?
No, this
It
is
still would be to an extent because
I
those
would
people are still
I would say the fan it's almost like I would say from like a my vibe like and I'm not saying Bo Bichette is nowhere near good as this guy was in his sport. It's kind of like when the Eagles got T.O. It's like the missing piece. Like you get the missing piece and okay, we trade Bohm to improve another area of the team. Maybe they trade Bohm for like an outfielder. Maybe they
yeah,
trade Bohm.
or back end like a middle rotation guy or another bullpen guy, like a left.
Yeah,
You
like
know, so there's
yeah, basically, I think
and
this is
listen, they struck out on Bichette, and it was very frustrating the way it happened. I really have a hard time blaming the Phillies for the way it went down. I really
right.
do.
And like, and honestly, dude, like, I'm kind of, with Bo Bichette, like, I know you like Bo Bichette. I like Bo Bichette's bat. Like, unless Bo Bichette's going to hit like he's done in years past, people are going to basically call him an overpaid bone if he's not hitting because his defense is going to be bad. It's a fact, Michael. It's going to be bad. He's like his
It doesn't
father.
seem super.
His
I mean,
father, his
yeah.
father. If you pull up Dante Bichette's stats, you look at some of his numbers. He had a negative WAR, hitting like 35 home runs and 100 RBIs because he was so bad at defense and base running. Like,
Yeah,
think
you
about
look
that.
at his defense really did fall off Bichette, and it's kind of when he started getting hurt, like 20. Well, not for nothing, he was actually never good at defense. It's actually his only
Yes,
good
he
defensive year was
never
the
was good at
COVID year.
defense. That's my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, his only
So,
good defensive year was the COVID year.
and listen, is it close because
2024
he
was
signed
pretty
with the Mets?
solid on defense,
Like
but he
maybe
was
a
really bad
little.
with the bat.
Like basically signing Bichette is like I don't know, man. It's like if you go on FanDuel and you just have a bad week of betting and you start betting on something that's like you never bet on before. You're like, I just want to feel something different.
No,
That's
sure, and it's
that's what it would have been. Now, um, so with my thing with you brought up like the lack of protection. I think Bryce Harper. It's kind of fair to say it's like you're giving me criticism. Well, like what have you done to like help protect me? Because I'm a big reason why Trey Turner and Schwartz have had a lot of success like last year, right?
Mhm, mhm.
You know, I
Absolutely.
I got Bryce Harper's baseball reference pulled up. Like last year, he had in 132 games. Sorry, 70 walks. Okay, he gets pitched around a lot. He does chase out of the zone. I think realistically, if he was less aggressive, he would probably easily get 100 walks. But you're not paying Bryce Harper 30 some $1 million a year, Michael,
23.
to I'm sorry, 33
They
million
still have
dollars.
23, they still want a huge discount, man, like, that's another thing too.
Like
Like,
you're
of course, yeah, yeah.
like
People give a shit about the extension, it's a raise.
did you listen to his like any of clips from Bussin' with the Boys when he was on their show?
Yeah, loosely, a couple of them.
Yeah, I listened to it. It was actually pretty good. To me, it's the if the intention was to get him to play better, I think that part might be accomplished. But it's realistically, Bryce Harper's going to be here longer than Dave Dombrowski is. Dave Dombrowski is most likely.
This could be his last season for
I
all
agree.
things
I think it
considered,
could be his
like,
last season. And I think Preston Mattingly is probably going to take over as
yeah.
like the head of baseball operations. And, where he's an analytics guy, you know.
Yeah, I think Preston's great, you know?
And honestly, too, I think having Don Mattingly around Bryce, I think that's kind
It'll
of cool.
scratch an itch for him, I guess,
I
but, like,
guess because
yeah,
Bryce Harper
right,
grew up a Yankee fan, so hey, you got Donnie baseball there,
sure. But anyways, those are our state of the teams as it currently stands. As you can see, there are, some negatives kind of sprinkled throughout all of them, but there are
I,
reasons to be excited about a couple of them.
I mean, realistically, if Bryce Harper gets off to a hot start, I do feel like you're gonna hear it's gonna be like, oh, Dombrowski motivate. Like, come on, man. It's not. It's like it's weird because it's the GM saying it. Like, I think it's way different if Topper said it.
Yeah,
The Topper would never
yeah.
say something like that. So
No, he's not an idiot. So, we'll well, we'll get to some baseball in an hour. The Phillies are gonna first pitch.
yeah.
Season's right around the corner. Other seasons are coming to, their end, and then we got the draft, and then, the tournaments coming
Right.
around
And
too, March Madness, so
next week's show, we're gonna actually go and break down a lot of things about the Phillies. We're gonna be more in depth. I'm excited to talk about some of the
yeah,
young guys. But
yeah.
yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay safe.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.